Good day, everybody. Tracy Brown here. So obviously I'm not in my usual space today and usual time. Kind of had a different day after the holiday. So I'm outside, a little humid, a little breezy. So and it's been raining like crazy, as many people know. So this video is going to be a little different. I highly recommend though that everybody watch it, even if you don't feel like you struggle with knowing your edges with fullness, because there'll be some good tips in here for you too. And I apologize for the background noise. It might get noisy. If it does, I will probably stop and maybe start over again because I am out in public. So anyway, I know it can be really hard when you're first lifting the lid off all the restriction. So even if you're not somebody who identifies with struggles with binge eating or a lot of emotional eating, maybe you're a careful eater that, sometimes you kind of overeat and you feel terrible and guilty about it and you're mean to yourself about it, but for the most part, you're trying to watch things very carefully. Or maybe it just feels like, I just stopped dieting, I'm trying to do intuitive eating, and now that I'm eating whatever I feel like I want, it's feeling really out of control and I don't know where to stop. And so right there, I think it's important to stop and think about, gosh, I think I've used this dieting as a way to, like an artificial external set of rules to know how to feed myself, because it's been so long since I fed myself from hunger and fullness, I don't even know what that feels like anymore. And it can be really scary to know that the amount of food that you've allowed yourself on dieting world just hasn't been enough, and that to get full, it takes a good bit more food. And I think that scares the bejesus out of a bunch of us, because it's not congruent. The mismatch is I need more than I thought I did, and it feels like out of control. It feels like a binge. So you may not be binging. That's what the point of that sentence is. But if you're a person that, like, you know what, no, I know I'm full. I could have overeaten. We'll get to that point in a second. I could have overeaten, but I'm not sure. Or I know I didn't overeat. I know I ate breakfast and lunch and snacks, and here I'm at dinner and I can't stop. And so I want to talk about a couple things that might be driving that, and then a little bit more about some of the framework I might suggest you use to help you. So number one is, you know what, you are still in the habituation phase, and a little bit in that rebellion phase of like, oh my goodness, I'm eating more food and I'm really bad, which makes me want to eat before I turn off the faucet again of eating. So there's a little bit of like get it while you can eating possibly happening for you. So there's that. There could be, there's a message here that I need to learn about what this food and how I eat it and where I eat it and what all that means. So we have to learn how to decode these messages of like why we're going after how come we're going after so much volume, or how come we're going after certain kinds of foods in certain kinds of ways. So the message behind either the behavior, or even if it's a very specific food. I'm cautious when I use the word craving, because I guess we could just call it that. But there's a message behind the craving. It's not just random, I'm out of control and I can't stop eating, flour or sugar or cheese or whatever it is. So there's that. There's but I don't want to stop because it tastes so good kind of eating, and that goes back to a decoding message of maybe we don't have enough permission for choice in our lives. Maybe we don't have enough joy or play or pleasure in our lives, and so it's playing out there, which goes to another point. I just want to binge. I just want to eat. I want to feel that. I'm looking for the sensation that gives me, and that's a really one with my clients, I spend a lot of time decoding, because sometimes it's physiological. Like we are eating to a certain amount of physical sensation to get grounded, to feel safe, to feel landed somewhere. And then that gives us maybe a sense of like safety or numbness or whatever it is. So that I want to binge thing, if we don't judge that, it's really about what is the somatic that you are getting from that overly full thing. What do you get from that? What happens in your nervous system? What's happening emotionally for you? What does that feel like in your body, basically? And I'll give you an example. I'm not going to use somatic terms for this, but I had a woman one time who had gotten to the place, she didn't know why she was doing it, but she got into the place where she had gotten clear that like there were times, not all the time, but sometimes she binged. Sometimes she binged out of rebellion because she was afraid she couldn't really eat what she wanted. And she wanted to eat it while she could. Another time it might be she was feeling pretty low. Like she was in kind of this, like, and if you don't know these terms, you can Google it or you can look at some other videos. I'm going to do an actual course at some point here about nervous system different functions and how our food plays into trying to kind of like cope with those and basically provide help for those states. But anyway, she was in this parasympathetic state of kind of feeling really low and kind of down and depressed, and it was painful, and she didn't like it, and she didn't know how to get out of it. So essentially she would eat. She would eat a lot, almost, you know, the place like really stomach pain, like pain. So she didn't have to feel the pain of that sensation, that sadness. And she would label it as like the emotional sadness. It wasn't like this physiologic lowness, but I think that she was actually at that point as well, where it's like, I can't get out, so I'm going to do something, essentially. And so we had to work through other strategies, of course, to work with the nervous system and be able to recognize when she was in that state and recognize when that was coming so she could do something before binging felt like the only option. So anyway, that's sometimes what I want to binge is, and I'm just going to do it. And we don't want to judge that. I talked a little bit earlier in the video about satisfaction with enoughness, you know, enough satisfaction in our lives to not need to get it through the overfullness. So that's one of the reasons why sometimes, like not one, but three so far I've mentioned, 3 or 4, to understand like why it's hard to stop when we're full sometimes. And I'm not talking about the artificial fullness of like eating because your brain's telling you that's enough. That's not real fullness or real satisfaction or satiation. That's fear, and that's fear. But full fullness, like actual, I'm like at a 9 or 10, and I'm having a hard time stopping at these places, is we don't know our edges. We just haven't had enough practice at it. And so if you're at that place, I'm going to give you one tip. I haven't released this yet, so I don't want to like jump the gun, but I do have, I've put together a very low-cost, somatic-based kind of like understanding our cravings, stopping when we're full, little kind of mini course, not like a big long thing. I still haven't made it nice and pretty, so that's why I haven't talked about it. So it's a couple, it's a little bit away, but probably a month or so. But I do want to share one tip from that, is that if you're struggling with like knowing your edges, like you just find yourself over and over and over again not knowing how to stop at fullness, one, it probably won't stop if we keep judging it. I'll just be really honest. We have to bring radical self-compassion for there's a function to this that I don't quite understand yet. And if I keep judging it and make myself bad or wrong for it, and even my self-talk, it matters. If I keep telling myself I'll never get this, you know, intuitive eating doesn't work, I want to just almost plead with you, beg with you, can we stop? Can we, like, you know what, I don't know why this is happening. I want this to stop yesterday. But there's a function for this. There's a reason for this, and I'm going to try to take Tracy's advice, and I don't have to love it, but can I say, you know what, I don't know what's going on with this. How come I keep doing this? But there's probably some reason my body thinks this is helping me survive something right now. And so can I just accept that? Let's just start with that. I guess I'm giving you 2 tips. And number 2, if you're a person who's not, when I say not that active, what I find sometimes that people struggle with a little bit is, especially if we're eating to like feel something, feel grounded, feel, or like kind of tone something, like some emotion down, I want you to recognize that your body can be your best friend with this, and we might need to move. So I'm going to give you 2 ideas here. is that I highly recommend, if you're watching this, to go out and get one of those big physio balls. You know, like the big ones you see people sit at gyms, or maybe you have one that you sit at your office. If you already have one, awesome. Sit on it more often and do some just gentle movement. And the reason that's important is because our vagus nerve is what innervates from, like, obviously our brain all the way down to all the viscera, all the organs in our bodies, and especially if we're in this kind of lower eating to feel something kind of place, not like this high anxious kind of place. It could be that, and we'll talk about that in a totally different video, but get a ball, sit on it, and gently bounce on it. It gives some toning basically to the part of your parasympathetic nerve that has a lot to do with social engagement and basically like juicing your system up. And if you can feel a little bit more in your body and that feels gentle enough, then do that. I know that seems like, what does that got to do with my hunger and fullness and my fullness? I want to help you wake up your body to more sensation because you're having a hard time stopping when you're full. Okay, so this is like somatic work a little bit, guys. Not just typical checking with your hunger and fullness, which I'm assuming you're already doing, which is why you probably all watch me. The other thing is, I'll say if you're not checking in very much, then you need to be doing that, and maybe you need to be practicing that more often, like check in, just a general check-in more often. I have my clients sometimes check in hourly. They don't like it because, you know, it's focused on your body and your food, and you may not like that, but it's the medicine. We need to be doing that. Lastly, I'll say if you have an office job, if you sit a lot and talk like I do, or do computer work or whatever, I need you to be getting up a little more often. Not exercising, not being compulsive, but just stand up and feel your feet on the floor. Maybe move your arms a little bit, whatever. But we need to get this system a little bit juiced up. So this is something maybe you weren't expecting to hear in a video like this. But I gotta tell you that a lot of times we need to do really different things to get more body awareness that feels safe. And that has nothing to do with taking away food. Nothing to do with taking away food. So I'm hoping this video was helpful. Please share it because I know these are things that aren't commonly talked about. So please share this video if you know anybody who's struggling with like having a hard time stopping, having a hard time with their cravings. You know, there's a lot more to talk about, but I don't want to make this video in like an hour long. And of course, we need to talk about like what our cravings mean, which I talked about earlier in this video, those kind of things. But I could talk an hour about each of those different points I made. And I know that I gotta move on, and probably you do too. So anyway, please share this if you're struggling. I'm gonna put a link below to some other things that might be helpful with being more discerning with like what's my physical hunger and fullness, what's my emotional hunger and fullness, and also just finding your edges a little bit more internally. So if this video was helpful, please share it. Please share the resources I'm gonna share below. And thank you all so much who watch, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.